universal. And most of the Zohar is universal because it's dealing with the inner world. And it's looking at life as we live it from the inside out. Instead of most of us have this kind of quasi-scientific world look at from the outside in, the Zohar says, no, 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 no. Start your vision in the beginning and look outward into the world. And then you will see the unity that we seek and that heals us. Because the unity of reality is actually part of the healing agent, the tool of healing, the tool of blessing of our Creator. And, when the Torah came down on Mount Sinai, the blind saw, and the broken were healed, and the deaf heard, and the mute were able to speak. Because when the light, the universal light hits any individual, it fixes that individual. And that's what's part of the universality and the integration of the human soul into all its little parts, 8 billion little parts of the human soul, but it's all one living entity from the perspective of the inner world of our Creator. Now, we have this piece of Zohar, and it starts out as Soda Bracha, the secret of blessing. The secret of blessing, B'chol makom shelo nimtza zechar v'nekeva, brachot lo shorot alav. In any place where you don't have the male and the female forms, energies, male and female presence, unity of the male and the female, there's a lack of blessing. Blessing is this light we were just talking about. But you cannot have the blessing unless you have the masculine side, the giving energy, and the feminine side, the receiving energy. And so many people I see and speak with on a regular basis are telling me how I don't need to be married anymore. I don't need a man. I don't need a woman. And it seems like it's a lot of mental work to convince ourselves of that way of living life. Listen, 25% of most populations are single people. I'm talking about above the average marrying age. So there is a certain segment of the population that doesn't get married. But for the most part, most people like being married. And in our generation, it's very complex, obviously, with all the different options and opportunities and cultural norms and reinterpretations of life that make, just about anything goes. But of course, in the Torah, we don't accept that idea that anything goes. We accept that there is a best way to live life. And then there's ways to live life that are, shall we say, less than best. And he says that the Zohar teaches us that without that unity of the male and the female, the light in the vessel, the giving and the receiving, the blessing cannot come. Because you could have all the beautiful, fresh rainwater falling out of the sky, but if you have no way to catch it, you could have a hard time catching every drop in your mouth. And then you could have the most sophisticated water catching equipment, but without the rain coming down, it's going to be a dry day. And so this unity, this presence of the male and female is essentially woven into the structure of creation at every single level. Well, okay, and therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Blessed Holy One, Go'eh Bocheh, he groans and cries. Now, a lot of people have a hard time with that idea, that God actually cries. God moans and groans. This universal, eternal, infinite being can cry and moan and groan over human beings that are not together, over families that are broken apart. The rabbis teach that the altar in Jerusalem would shed tears when people got divorced. What does that mean? What is that altar? We're talking about the altar of stones in a temple that existed 2,000 years ago? Well, it sounds metaphoric, right? But Kabbalah goes beyond metaphor. It teaches us how metaphor is the union of the physical and the spiritual. That's why it says in Masechet Brachot that a metaphor, an analogy, is 1/60th of prophecy, because the communication of information is taking place through an image. The image is not physical, but it is of something physical. But it's a connection between the two. When you say it's hot as a summer day, you're comparing your inner feeling of heat to an idea of an external reality. The connection is your perception. And that's the connection of the physical and the spiritual, the outer and the inner world. We need to unify those two, because that's where the male and the female meet, at the point of the inner world, where the inner world meets the physical world. And so when we have all that in mind, it's not so hard to think of God shedding a tear on the Mizbeach, because he's the one who made the union in the first place. And it's hard to see anybody break up with anybody, whatever the reasons are. Now, as it is written, God roars like a lion, roars doubly on his nevehu, on his landscape, on his view, on his mountain, on the place he looks upon the human race. What does he say? Oi, shecharavti et beiti, saravti et chali. Woe to me that I destroyed my house, and I burnt my palace. God doesn't blame the Romans, or the Greeks, or the Babylonians who came along and destroyed our house, his house. He blames himself. God takes responsibility. Now, how many times I sit with couples and they're always blaming the other guy or the other lady for the destruction of the family. God takes responsibility. I destroyed my house. I burnt my palace. And that is a unification in itself of this male-female partnership that God has with creation and with the Jewish people. And when the opposite is true, when there is unity between the male and the female, then there is blessing. Because the blessing is the light with its vessel. It's the power with a way to express it, to receive it, and use the power. And when Knesset Yisrael, which is another nickname for the divine presence, which is the feminine aspect in relation to God's infinite, unknowable, eternal self, it's the immanent present self that God reveals in the world through the human race, and sometimes through the animal world as well. And sometimes God reveals himself through the mineral kingdom and through the level of there's other kingdoms, like the kingdom of fire, the kingdom of wind. See, God can turn his wind into an angel, or more accurately, God can send an angel into the wind, which gives intentionality to something that seems to be rather inanimate, the wind. The wind can be very animate, and so can an earthquake, and so can a flood, and so can lightning. It depends on where Hashem puts his power. But this time, when the divine presence comes out of exile, which is now, which has been happening for a long time, little by little, person by person, step by step, the Jews coming back to themselves, to their Torah, to their nation, to their land, to their people, to their values, which are the values of the Torah. As they come back, they're coming out of exile. Amra lefanav. And and it was said, now the Zohar slips into taking a verse from Shira Shirim, the Song of Songs of Shlomo HaMelech, and it says, they said before God, think of it as really that the divine presence is God's wife. Hikidali, tell me, Sha'ahava nafshi, you that my soul loves. See, the divine presence is talking back to God like a lover. Tell me, my love, the one who loves my soul loves. Ata ahuv nafshi ata shekol ahavat nafshi b'cha. You are the beloved of my soul because all my love is in you and your love is in me. And where will we eat? Where will be the field, the pasture of blessing, the field of sustenance? Where will it be? Where will you provide yourself with sustenance? Now, it's a very interesting idea. You're telling me that the indwelling presence of God is speaking to the transcendental? They're worried about what they're going to have for dinner? Amazing. But why can't I allow my imagination to stretch a little bit? And she asks the eternal king, where will you take your nourishment from the depth of the blessing of the stream? Now, this nachal in Kabbalah is a very big concept, and it represents the outflowing divine presence into this world. It starts way high up in the spiritual realm. It comes down into this world. Shelo posek, that never stops, because this river cannot stop. The minute this river stops, everything flashes off the screen. It's gone. How will you provide sustenance to yourself from the light of the upper Eden? See, Garden Eden has many levels too. It's not just one big park, where everybody hangs out by the water fountain. No. It's many levels with many places to go and visit. And many great souls have places to go there. How will you run through the afternoon? It's a little bit more than running. Tarbitz, it's like striking, but it's in a positive sense. How will you strike out in the afternoon? And how will you provide sustenance to all the others if they don't have the structure of male, female, bonded, unity, commitment, purpose together, which is what the whole other side is assigned to do at the end of days? The Talmud tells us that the Yetzer Hara's main job at the end of days is to break up families and attack the sacred union of male and female. How will you give them their sustenance? Which are always receiving from you, but they can't receive from you if they're split apart, if they're not working together, if they're not sacrificing a little bit of themselves for each other. And she goes on to say, the divine presence says, I was getting my life force from you. And every day. And I was watered like the garden. And I, from your nourishment, gave that presence, that light over to the rest of the creatures beneath the wings of the divine presence. Vayisrael nizono bi, and the people Israel are receiving from me. V'akshav, v'akshav, shlema yeh keot yah, and now whole I will be, like the time of God, but the word etya can also mean the pencil of God, the pen of God. I will be complete, whole. But how can I receive blessing without the covering? How can we receive blessing if we don't have this distinction, this commitment to each other, this wearing the talis together that the husband and wife put over their heads at the wedding canopy? Where will that be? Where will that blessing be? Because that's the vessel to hold the light. And when we need those blessings, we have to have the vessel ready. I can't get the blessing, the vessel, if I've already got the light. It's too late. I could have the light, but it's too late for it to go out running looking for a vessel when the rain is coming down, when the waterfall is flowing. And I don't find the vessel in my hand if there's not the union of the male and the female. Upon the herds of your friend. And how can I stand upon them and give them their nourishment to the flocks of the living God? And there will not be one, and I will not be able to shepherd them if I can't give them life force. You can't take your flock of goats or sheep to an empty hillside. And to provide sustenance for the flocks of your friends. Elohem Yisrael, these are the Jews. Shehem b'nei Avot, who are the children of the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Shehem Merkava, they are the holy chariot. Lamala, and a holy chariot. What does a chariot do? A chariot simply carries something from one place to another. It might carry a warrior into a battle, or it might carry your groceries home in the back of your little wagon. It's your chariot, but the spiritual chariot is the power invested in the human soul to reach up to the higher light and hold it within and bring it down to this world and to share it with others. And this is the job of a man, chiefly, for most of history. It was a man's job to do that work, to take out the chariot and bring home the sustenance. Now that's been turned around. Women don't need men to do that anymore. And it's destroying families. It's destroying the fabric. And it's making men not want to work. Why do I need to work when my wife has a job? That is a destructive statement. We need to work because we need to bring down the light. Whether it's called dollars or it's called watermelons, it doesn't matter. Men need to do the work to bring down the light. And that light is Torah. That light is prayer. That light is holy stories. That light is the struggling of the working out of the Gemara and all the arguments of the sages. And if the women aren't motivated to to receive the sustenance, the system breaks down again. So the system is breaking down from both sides. There is no one to blame but ourselves. We can't blame the men. We can't blame the women. We can't blame the feminists. We can't blame the chauvinists. All we can do is look in the mirror and ask myself, am I taking on the divine pattern? Am I owning my own form that was created in God's image? Am I fulfilling what I can do? And it's a decision. It's like every decision. In a moment, you can make the right decision and change everything. In one moment, you can decide, you know what? It doesn't matter how much I make per week, per hour, per month, per year. What matters is that I work and I provide. I give everything I can give. And every woman will appreciate that more than a few extra zeros that just gets flittered away. And when your husband's not home, when a man's not active and he's not involved and he's not present for his wife, what does it matter whether he's bringing home 10,000 or 100,000? There's nobody home to spend the money on. And you think the spending of money will release enough endorphins and dopamine into your blood to keep you happy the rest of your life? Is that really what you think's happening? That little shopping buzz, you get with your friends when you head to the mall? A friend of mine just left the world yesterday. We went to the graveyard. The graveyards now aren't just regular graveyards. They're like 5-story buildings. We walked in this graveyard in Jerusalem, and I thought it was like a mall. They had decorations. I said, this is the mall of the living and the dead where we meet. And it's over that fast. For Akiva Moshe ben Reuven Halevi, our friend here in Jerusalem, who passed away, let these words be for his merit. And let our choices be for the merit of our fathers and our grandfathers and all the people who lived this teaching to give it to us. And we should be blessed and understand how the blessing works. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu machzik kli lebracha. God does not hold on to a vessel for blessing, ela aidei shalom, only through peace. It is through peace we have the blessing to hold his blessing. We have a kli, a vessel to hold his blessing. So this Shabbat, and Shabbat of course is the feminine in relation to the masculine 6 days of the week that give, and then Shabbat is the day we receive. That's another paradigm of the male-female dyad that is operating on every single level of creation, from the molecules, the atoms, all the way to the planets and the stars and the galaxies. God bless you all. We'll see you tomorrow night for Saturday Night Zohar, hopefully. We'll have a lot more to say because the Zohar is endless. And there's endless wisdom to be had, and we just have to open our hearts and our eyes and our ears. And we'll find that blessing through the peace that we find in the center line of creation, which is God's Torah. God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.